Hello, everyone. Thank you all so much for coming to our second SAVMA and Hills Diversity and Inclusion webinar. Tonight, we're going to be highlighting racial diversity with Dr. Will Draper. So this webinar is part of a four-part series where we will focus on various areas of diversity and with members of the veterinary profession. My name is Jessie Coriel. I'm the Cultural Outreach Officer for the student AVMA. Before we get started, just like to make a few housekeeping announcements. So first, please make sure your microphone is muted throughout the duration of the webinar. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. I'll help field questions with Dr. Draper during and after the webinar, and there might be just some time where conversation is prompted tonight. Next item, this webinar is going to be recorded and posted to our SAVMA YouTube channel. So be sure to be on the lookout for those from your SAVMA delegates, the links for those. Before we get going with the webinar, I'd like to first take a moment to thank Hills Pet Nutrition for their sponsorship. Without this support, this webinar series would not be possible. So with us this afternoon is Dr. Hillary Noyes from Hills. So please welcome Dr. Noyes as she has a few words on behalf of Hills.
Yeah, thank you, Jessie. Hopefully I'm coming through all right. It looks like my screen just froze, but hopefully I'm working for you guys. So yeah, Hills is very, very happy to be able to support this. This came out of the cancellation of the SAVMA Symposium. We normally host and sponsor the diversity brunch that happens there, and we love that event. And so when we weren't all able to get together, we tried to think of what else we could do to help promote diversity and inclusion. It's one of Hills's core values, and Jessie and the rest of the SAVMA team did an amazing job putting this series together, so happy to see you all here. I see a few names that I recognize from last time too, and it looks like quite a few more this time, so I'm glad we've got a great turnout tonight. Dr. Will, we're really excited to have you here, and I won't take up any more of your time, but on behalf of Hills, thank you for participating tonight, and thank you all for attending.
Thank you so much, Dr. Noyes. Thank you again, Hills, for your support with the series. Next, I'd like to introduce the Multicultural Veterinary Medical Association, which is an organization dedicated to addressing the need of improving cultural and ethnic diversity in the veterinary profession. So telling us a little bit about MCVMA this evening is Dr. Steffi Ann Dupree. Prior to graduating from Cornell University College of Vet Med, Dr. Dupree served in the SAVMA House of Delegates as the Integrated Communications and Diversity Committee Chair, as well as on the Executive Board as the Cultural Outreach. She now works as a supervisory public health veterinarian for the USDA and is in the process of working as a relief small animal veterinarian as well. Dr. Dupree, the floor is yours.
Thanks so much, Jessie. I hope everybody can hear me. Thanks so much for having me and giving me a bit of time to provide some more information about MCVMA. So as you just heard, MCVMA stands for the Multicultural Veterinary Medical Association. It is right now, it's still a very young group. We started in 2014 as a Facebook group because we felt the need to provide that support for veterinarians beyond vet schools. And it started with 5 dedicated founding members, and today it's a pretty fast growing association with 9 official leadership boards and 501c3 status as of a few months ago, so we're very excited about that. Our mission statement is to promote racial and ethnic diversity and cultural competency within the profession, so we can better serve our diverse multicultural society. And our vision is to foster a community of veterinary professionals from a diverse background and cultures, so we can create that network for our members and to provide support for each other within the profession. We'll also hope to kind of harness this collective knowledge from our membership to address the problems and needs of, I guess, our society and our profession as a whole as well. So we have multiple platforms on social media where you can find us: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, but I also encourage you to find us in our very brand new and shiny website called mcvma.org. It's pretty easy, so go ahead and find us there. And just some brief initiatives that we've been working on. Hopefully you've heard a couple of them, but one is our safe space talks that we launched a few weeks ago. They were very successful. We launched two versions of them, and we're hoping to launch a few more based on the feedback that we received, and they were in the initial phase, kind of an opportunity to provide safe space from. I just saw someone in the chat. I'm really glad. Yeah, they were really wonderful opportunity to provide the community, specifically Black, Indigenous, people of color, the space to speak and to process the events that were happening around the country. And we're working with Not One More Vet as well on some research to find the intersectionality between race, ethnicity, and mental health, mental well-being. We're also developing a mentorship program. And the last thing, which hopefully you've heard about, is we are hoping to start tackling some issues involving systemic racism in the profession, things that people have been working on for a while now. So we're hoping to have some momentum to get some real change, and we're hoping to work with the AVMA in order to do that. So hopefully you've seen the survey that was released, and you know that we're hoping to develop some lists of actionables as well, in order to kind of address some issues that we've seen from the survey responses or in general practice, even the classroom clinics before vet school sometimes. So yeah, so that's basically an overview of our initiatives, and I'm really happy to have had the space to be able to tell you guys a bit about us. So feel free to find us more, reach out to us, and let us know what you want to hear from us. Thank you so much, Jesse.
Yeah, that's awesome, Steffi. Thank you so much for joining us.
Of course.
And last but not least, I would like to introduce our speaker, Dr. Will Draper. So Dr. Will is a well-known small animal practitioner in the Atlanta area. Although a California native, he attended Tuskegee University in Alabama for both undergrad and veterinary studies, and graduated from vet school in 1991. He began practicing in Atlanta and eventually started the Village Vets Practice Group in 2000. In 2007, Dr. Will opened Georgia's first and only AHA-accredited small animal after-hours emergency facility, where he presently serves as general practice owner and CEO while simultaneously practicing part-time. Dr. Will and his wife, Dr. Fran Tyler, are featured on the Nat Geo Wild produced TV series Love and Vets, which is now streaming on Disney+. I've watched a few episodes. It's super fun. He was also a featured veterinary commentator on Nat Geo Wild's Animal ER Live. He was honored as Veterinarian of the Year by Purina Proplan in 2013, as well as being recognized in Atlanta Magazine's Best Vets since 2004. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Dr. Will Draper. I think you're muted still, Dr. Draper.
Oh, am I unmuted now?
No, you're set. You're good.
Okay, good. What I said was, man, that dude sounded pretty awesome. But I appreciate that. And, listening, I had the pleasure of chatting with Jesse yesterday, my new friend Jesse, and after listening to she and Steffi, I tell you, I mean, I thought I was smart. I was not nearly that bright or outgoing at your age, so it gives me a whole lot of hope for the future. I appreciate you guys. Thank you. And thanks to Hills. I'm a big fan of Hills since they started giving me free dog food in vet school back in 1987. I've stuck with them. Thank you, Dr. Noyes. And I am very happy to be here. I will say, I don't know if speaker was the right term because I don't necessarily prepare things. I like to talk and have conversations. Plus, I have, while I work part-time, I've been, had kind of pulled in a lot more since COVID and just with social distancing and trying to handle the heavy load because we're very busy that I'm a little scatterbrained because I just finished a surgery that I hadn't done in a long time. But I am really happy to be here talking to you guys. I've practiced in the metro Atlanta area since 1992. I came out of school. My wife and I were classmates at Tuskegee. We both came out in 91, and eventually she did an internship at UGA. I did one up in Maryland, and we ended up here. I actually found this picture from my first job in 1992. That was they put pictures of the doctors up in the lobby, and that's me right there in 92. That wonderful head of hair, and I was rocking that mustache. And it's, particularly being from California, which is a little different than the South. Being in the South for college and my career has been amazing, You know, with some challenges, sometimes some things that are very disappointing and depressing, but, you know, I am fortunate. I was raised by two native Alabamans. My mother is a teacher. My father was an engineer. Both also went to Tuskegee, and were very, very supportive, and always told me I could do whatever I wanted to do, and never gave me any idea that I couldn't do anything because of the color of my skin. And even though once I experienced certain things, it gave me a different mindset, and I reacted differently in ways that I hope teach people and have made me a better person and help me be as successful as I am, because I just kind of feel I have every right and every opportunity and the right to take advantage of opportunities just like everybody else. You know, I think in some senses, as a Black man, it's a little similar to, and particularly for me, and no disrespect to being a woman, quite frankly, who, you know, you go out in the world and, you know, you work as hard as a man, but, you know, you're always still, women are still paid a little bit less than men for the same job, but, you know, and you know you're as good as them. You can't let that bias get in your way. You just got to still go out and do what you want to do. And it's kind of similar in my world. So, and I've just been blessed and fortunate to have, you know, I met the right person and married and came to the right town and and we're a great team and great support. And she has different challenges because she's biracial. So if she does check in, I'm sure she has some interesting insight. But, you know, just I feel like I'd like to take some questions, because I can sit here and talk about things all day. I can tell you maybe a couple of instances during my career that I felt, and some of it's been written about in the AVMA and things like that. You know, a client I had who in 1995 brought his dog in and wouldn't see me because he said his dog wasn't seeing a color doctor. And when I say, you know, thanks to my parents, I just handle situations differently. The answer, a lot of people, when I tell that story, they kind of instantly say, well, I bet you told him to hit the bricks, or you told him to leave. And I bet you showed him. I said, no, I didn't do that, because my job was to take care of his pet. It really didn't have anything to do with him. I just have to figure out how to get to his pet, you know, and as long as he doesn't, you know, swing anything at me, we'll figure it out. And over that, a course of the next few years, he and I became very good friends. And he got from the guy who his dog wouldn't see the color doctor to me being the only doctor he'd see to his last day when he called me in to put his dog down. So, you know, it's just wonderful what the animal bond will do. The human-animal bond will bring a young Black man from California towards an older white gentleman who at the time was probably in his 80s and I'm sure was, of course, very racist. You know, we taught each other something, and we were both better people, you know, and I never saw it, but I always like to think that it helped him deal with the Black guy he sees at the gas station a little bit better. The Black guy he sees on the MARTA. You know, it wasn't going to change him completely, but it may have changed him a little bit. And that's what it's going to take. Everybody needs to recognize what's in front of them. It doesn't necessarily mean it needs to be a roadblock or you need to, you know, give it the bird and walk away from it. You got to know what we're dealing with and face onto it, but still also know who you are and what you can do, because you can do anything you want if you put your mind to it. And I am a living example. Hey, my wife just jumped on here at work. You're stay muted, Fran. I'm sorry, Jesse, is this messing up our plan here? How do we handle this now?
It's totally fine.
Well, why don't we, did you turn your microphone on, hon? But that's my wife, Dr. Francoise Tyler. And there's a picture up there. Those are our 4 kids right there. And we've been married going on 27 years. And we met when we were 20 years old in vet school. And she's my best friend, and she's the brains of the operation. I'm the brawn. I throw stuff around, but she's what makes it work. And I of course was talking about, you know, I told my story. Can you hear me, Fran? I told my story about Colonel Talker, and just kind of talked about some of the things I've experienced. I know you don't have much time. If you want to kind of check in, my co-host on this show we shot years ago that they decided to put on Disney Plus again. I can't hear you, Fran. You there? Oh.
Sounds like you're still muted, Dr. Tyler.
Can you unmute yourself?
Okay.
Oh, there you go.
Better?
Hey.
Hey.
Yes.
Yes. Hi there. Who am I speaking with? I'm sorry. Besides Will.
A lot of people. A bunch of students. A great bit of students. That was a great introduction.
We are with SAVMA, and we are hosting this series with Hills Pet Nutrition.
Right.
So students from all over the country here joining us.
Oh, excellent. Well, hello, good evening, and yeah, good afternoon, wherever you are. Sorry, I'm just finished. Well, I'm not even finished, but finishing as far as seeing clients anymore. So, hi. Thanks for inviting.
Yeah, if you guys just want to maybe tell us a little bit about what kind of challenges you maybe face today as, you know, either veterinary professionals or just in your day-to-day life, and how you kind of approach those situations, those challenges.
Go for it, Franny.
Go ahead. Sorry, my brain is coming down. Sorry.
Oh. You know, as far as today, you know, what's very interesting is it's pretty rare. You know, let's just be honest. You know, we are fortunately in a higher, bracket, household income bracket. You know, our kids have done, live in neighborhoods that are generally fairly safe for everybody, and which is interesting in our neighborhood because we live in a very, very red Republican county, and very often the only issues I ever had was going into the city and like getting on the MARTA and somebody not wanting some lady afraid to sit next to me because I'm Black, but still it's me. I'm in a suit. I have it's always just amazing to me, those little things. And really now there's just a different air out there as far as being Black and being, wanting to be heard. And I think I even have some friends who seem a little uncomfortable around me because they feel like it's a conversation they should have, but they don't want to have. And I'm not going to push them to do anything they don't want. It just seems a little anxious and tense right now. That's what I experience now. Now, as far as being a veterinarian, I work in Decatur, Georgia. It's a very, very liberal, kind, wonderful city, and I almost never have any issues. I mean, Fran will tell you, I walk down the street and it's like Mayberry. I'm like, Sheriff Andy. It's just great. So, but in the city a little bit, you see a little bit different things, and I'm sure our kids do. Fran? Yeah.
So as far as the racial challenges, I'm assuming that's what we're referring to.
Yeah, you're being Black. The challenge of being Black.
Yeah. So I will be honest, I have been pretty fortunate, have not had as many instances as Will and my colleagues, some of the other colleagues. I get in the past, 30 years, I guess, the main things that I have come across are kind of the opposite. Like I've had several situations, and not lately just because I'm not practicing as much, but when I was practicing a lot, that I walk in and the client may sigh or actually not even sigh, but like a sigh of relief, and even say, "Wow, I'm so glad to see you. I'm so glad you're not Black." and I, in the beginning, when I was younger, I would correct them and let them know they were wrong. But as I got older, I realized there was no point to this because they were always adults saying this, and it was just a sad situation. And I just nodded and ignored it and went on. So that's one thing. And it's just a sad situation that even has to come into play. And then they, attach it to their dog, saying, "Oh, what?" Many of them, the comments were made because my dog does not like Black people. or they smell different, or something stupid, just totally ridiculous. And again, it just gets down to that you just don't feel like even addressing it because it's stupid. So I think that's the one thing. As a woman, I will say again, not so much now. People are, I think, a little bit more accepting and whatnot. But in the beginning, I felt often prove myself more than my male colleagues to let them know that, hey, I'm just as good, if not better. They would have comments, like, if I were working somewhere there was a male doctor, where's this so-and-so, or where's so-and-so? But unlike Will, I haven't really had, I don't know, any other racial slur, about being Black per se. The other challenge is, I don't know if this applies, not racial, but just being a woman and a mom. And for those students who are out there, either moms as students or eventually vets as moms as vets, it was definitely a challenge to juggle. Yes, I went into this field because I love it, and definitely would do it again in a heartbeat. But I will say, especially when Will and I started having kids, that it was a struggle, almost to the point. I remember 10 years ago or so, something like that. I thought about just leaving the field so I could be a mom. But as far as racial, I don't know. I've been fortunate. I don't know. Will, can you remember anything in particular for me? Other than when we would go to conferences, we were always one of the few and rare Black vets at some of the big conferences, and we'll always get stares and whatnot. What else, Will?
That's a good point. What she's referring to is, when you have a practice and you deal with a lot of pharmaceutical reps, for those students here who will deal with that one day, the more you buy from them, the better care they take of you. And we are, again, with our practices being, probably the largest privately owned practice in the city, we're always invited to these special gatherings at a resort or sometimes it's been even Italy through Elanco, Mariel, things like that. And so it's the elite practices in the country. And whether there are 30 other practices or 300 other practices, and I am not exaggerating this, we are always the only two Black people in the room. It's just astounding to me, even as recently as 2019, that's been the case. So as far as diversity at this level, there isn't any, and it's almost always about 99% white. Every now and again an Asian or Latino, but minorities just aren't represented well at that level at all. And much better now than it was when we were in school. When I applied to vet school in 1987, it was with the understanding, as most people that I went to school at Tuskegee with, that's where you apply because that's the only school you're going to get in. Like I didn't apply to any other schools. My wife did because she had a different experience at UGA, but just didn't even think about it because it was just not even a consideration. And then when I got into school and I was a SAVMA rep for a couple of years, Tuskegee, the two reps from Tuskegee were always the only African-American reps there because we were the Black vet school. So, and one of the things that's almost a little ironic is that Tuskegee has amazing diversity in the vet school. There are as much of, it's not necessary. It's of course majority Black, but so much more is represented. I think Blacks are probably only like 52% or something like that of the class. So it's great there, but and now those things have changed. There was a time 30 years ago that if you saw a young Black veterinarian, they went to Tuskegee, and now even here in Georgia, they've gone to Ross, they've gone to UGA, they've gone to Cornell. It's just great. We still have a little ways to go, but we're getting somewhere. And I'm really happy about that. And one other thing I'd say that Fran mentioned is that, what I, when you've done this as long as we have, and you have a lot of relationships business-wise with your kids' parents, things like that. And you do fairly well. You kind of get to this point sometimes where when there are situations where somebody should probably speak up and say something, which I'm always one of the first ones to do, but even I, when a situation happens, sometimes you just kind of, rather than deal with it, you just kind of go, you know what, things are great for me, so screw him, or I'm going to ignore that. And I don't, something about what's going on now I don't feel that way anymore. And I kind of even recently spoke up to somebody that said something that I normally would not have commented on, but I just had to tell them. I said, you got to understand how insensitive and how borderline racist that is, even though you don't think it's racist. But it is, and it has been every time you said it. And it's just it's a different world, and we have to. We got a little bit of a battle on our hands, and we have to do it non-violently, but intelligently and with force.
So as practice owners, do you guys feel like you have to have measures in place to protect your employees or yourselves or other clients who come through that maybe are racially diverse or experience, racial comments or anything like that?
So I in general, and will of course expound upon it, but we expect our clients to show respect, regardless of their beliefs, regardless of beliefs or whatever, it doesn't matter. And if they show any kind of disrespect or rude behavior to our team members, especially if it's racially directed, then honestly, we often will just say goodbye, because there is absolutely no tolerance for that in our companies. Again, yes, it's America, and that's wonderful. You don't need to be rude, to be ugly, regardless of your beliefs, and especially if we're here helping your pet and helping you. Right, Will?
Absolutely. And what I would say, we're very liberal. I've hired, when I hire the best person, and I never even think, and I give a lot of this credit to my parents, I never think about whether they're black, white, what have you. I do take pride in the fact that we have more African-American vets on our staff than probably any practice in Metro Atlanta. And we're still maybe, 30% black, Fran? 40? I mean, it's the minority, definitely, but we have quite a few, and it's just because we hire good people, and we hire people we feel like that are going to be a good part of our team. There is a small bit of pride in hiring a Tuskegee grad, but they haven't always been black. I have Tuskegee grads of any shade that belong here because of who they are and their character and their talent. So with that, we don't tolerate any bigotry, racism. If any client that comes in and makes such a comment just has to go. There's no second chance on that if it's just blatantly disrespectful. So, and we don't make any, and I've done that with people that have made comments about black people and told them I have to go, and they'll, say, well, of course you're gonna make me go and keep them, little comments like that, but I can give a shit. I don't care. It's the right thing to do, and it's my practice, and I'm proud of it, and I'm proud of my team, and I defend them, and they defend me. They wouldn't let anybody come in here and disrespect me or disrespect Fran, because we're a team and we're a family, and I feel that way about this community. So much so that you get a little comfortable, and then you go into the city and something happens, and you kind of have to, every now and again, you get a kind of a reminder, like, yeah, that's right, I'm black. Damn, I forgot that. You know, and my kids who have grown up our kids grew up with, you know, all kinds of friends. You know, it's just so beautiful. It was such a great thing for us to watch as two, you know, Fran and I are both in our early 50s now. I would say the age, but I don't want her to be mad at me. And, you know, we've grown up in a world where, you know, when we were in high school, if you were gay, you never said anything. Even if you were dating somebody in another race, you kind of kept it to yourself because you were afraid of what people would say and what they would think. And we now live in a community where, you know, they just all, if they don't like somebody, it has nothing to do with their gender or their preference. It's just, they just don't like them because of some other silly teenage reason, but they just have a very open heart and open mind, and we're very proud of that. But, you know, then they go out in the world and then they see that it's not, you know, our two oldest who are in college now, they went into the city and they realized it's not like, everywhere's not like Lilburn, Georgia. And it's kind of rough watching your kids go through that, and being parents now of 4 Black kids who are between the ages of 16 and 22, who I have to have a conversation with my son about what happens if he gets stopped by the police. And that's the same conversation my father had with me in the 80s. And my father grew up in a time in Alabama where he had to sit on the back of a bus and drink out of a particular water fountain and not look at this girl and go in the back door. You know, one of the things that's just really kind of remarkable and disappointing to me, if anything else, is that my 76-year-old father has to be concerned about his grandson, and he shouldn't have to. He shouldn't have to. And it worries me that I'll be concerned about my grandson, but I feel good about the tone and the change, and watching my kids, our kids, fight against injustice and engage in peaceful protests and post socially educational and enlightening things on you know, Instagram, stuff like that. It's just, I'm proud of them, and you're seeing it everywhere for the first time in really probably that I can remember, since we don't remember the 60s. So it's a different time and a good time, and I'm proud to be very, very, very proud to be Black. I'm proud of my family. I'm proud to be hopefully some sort of a role model to young men who now are kind of afraid of what might happen to them, and you know, kind of let them know that, you know, we're all going to do this together and you're going to be okay.
Thank you for sharing that. We have a question in the chat. So someone wants to know, how do you promote they want to know how to promote inclusion amongst your work staff as well as amongst your clientele. This particular individual has worked in environments where coworkers talk about current events and politics often. So they're just looking for advice on how you might help navigate those conversations and reorient conversations back towards.
You know, I don't even know how it happened, and maybe you can tell me, Fran, but the environments in our hospitals is that we kind of all understand that we don't talk politics. We come here to work because, you know, we're just in Georgia, and we're, you know, there are a lot of people that work for us that, you know, and I mean no disrespect to anybody, I'm just going to tell you how I feel about it. There are people that work for us that are Trump supporters and thinks he can do no wrong. And if we ever had a conversation about that, it probably wouldn't go well, because I just don't really get that. So we just, you know, I respect everybody's right to feel the way they do. You know, we don't, but it wasn't something that we made a rule. I think it's just kind of the example we set, that we come here to work and we come here to support each other and have fun, but we're not going to, you know, talk about each other's clothes. We're not going to talk about anybody, you know, you see the car somebody's driving, you know, in here, everybody's equal, and we're just not going to, there's no place for that. We have talked about, we certainly and on that note, though, as I think I shared with Jesse when we talked, we're talking more about social injustice and things like that than we ever have. We actually, when this started, we have a virtual cocktail hour on Zoom every other Thursday, which I guess will be next Thursday. I don't know. We got to see Fran. And we just kind of, we do a little housekeeping at the beginning, and then we just say, what do you guys want to talk about? And the last conversation we had, one of them just asked me and said, because they had read this article in the AVMA, and they said, I had no idea you had ever dealt with that. She's like, you don't ever talk about that. And, and this person's worked for me for 11 years. And we talked about that and some experiences and stuff like that. And it just was enlightening. And, when you have and I spend time with these people all day. So every day. So it's, it brings everybody a little closer together, and it helps them understand why people are marching down the street, and why when you drive past the street, there are people waving signs that say Black Lives Matter. And then you go down the street and you'll see one person waving a sign, Make America Great Again. I mean, because, people just have different thoughts, and that's okay as long as they exhibit it without misinformation and hurting people. It's going to make all us better people and coworkers.
So I'll just make a general comment in response to your question. As far as an actual protocol, we don't have a set protocol, and I'm just in review, or just kind of thinking back about all the hospitals where I've worked and done relief. I don't know that ever there's been a set rule that no, you cannot discuss this or cannot discuss that. I think it's, again, just being smart, being open-minded, being respectful, and, it's good discussion if it comes up. Do I recommend it? No. And I think that goes in any profession, whether it's veterinary or not, that, everyone is entitled to their beliefs, and that's totally fine. But I don't know that it is, I'll tell you here, at least in my office, it's not something that we really discuss, okay? Because there are too much room for heated discussions, and it's just, not worth it. So I don't know if that answers the question, but I think it's just an understood rule really everywhere.
Sure. So we have another question that kind of builds off that. As a lot of our viewers are students, including myself, this person is wondering what you guys think is kind of the best way to navigate or correct racial bias when you're experiencing it, and especially with critiquing or correcting your superiors.
Superiors.
Critiquing or correcting your superiors for being racially or otherwise insensitive?
Yes.
Is that what they mean?
Yes.
First, I think if you work for somebody who makes off-color jokes, shows some level of misogyny, what have you, I mean, you just got to go find another job, because I don't know how you deal with that.
Yeah, you shouldn't.
Because again, this is not a time to sit back and just allow that kind of comment, and I say it as somebody who did it, and I don't want anybody doing that now. I think we also talked about this, Jesse. My first boss, who I really learned a lot from, had a good level of respect for, and honestly still do, was just kind of this, good old Georgia boy. He was University of Georgia class 71, and he would, he's the one that told me that a dog growled at me because Black people smell differently and they don't like that smell. I mean, and he told me that. He wasn't even making a joke. He was telling me that because he was educating me, which is ridiculous. And I was 25 years old, and I just kind of like, oh, wow. Well, I mean, I've never heard that, but okay. He would make comments. I remember a young lady asked him once, she, you know, the shirts that they wore up at the front desk, the receptionist, were these white shirts. And she said, can we get a different color white shirt? Because when I wear a bra under it, everybody can see my bra. And he looked at her and he said, well, that's the idea. And, you know, something that these days, before he got to his car, the news would be coming up to interview him for the insensitive comments he made, you know, and people just kind of got away with that kind of stuff. But it's just unacceptable now, and everybody should be smarter, including my former boss. And I think they have to be called out. And if they don't make some apology, if they give you a hard time saying it's insubordination and you don't talk to me this way, go find another job, because you got to get away from that person. I feel the same way with that. If you work at a practice where there's not proper mentorship for you, if you work somewhere and they tell you to read the policy manual for a week and then say, okay, we're gonna make some appointments for you, go out there, holler if you need us, you go find another job, because you have to have that mentorship. Fran and I are as good as we are because of mentors that cared about us and held our hand for a while and taught us all about this wonderful occupation, including dealing with people. So, you know, I just think you have to know yourself, know what you can deal with, and speak up. But was there another part to that question, Jesse?
I think there was also, they were asking from the perspective of a student. So like whether that's in your schooling or if you're or anything like that.
You know, I'm sorry, Fran.
Go ahead.
You know, I think you know, you have to educate people, because a lot of times people don't know that they're saying something that's bad or wrong. You know, it's this, you know, a lot of people feel very passionate in not understanding what Black Lives Matter mean. And you know, people get really upset when somebody says, well, all lives matter. But what I would say, and what I did with the guy who didn't want his dog to see colored people, and you know, another client, an old lady who didn't want to see me, and then after she saw me, she was happy and called me to the lobby and told me she was proud at how far my people have come, which is kind of racist and insensitive. But again, I just understood, and this is also in the 90s, that this lady was, you know, she was an older Southern woman, and that was kind of a big deal for her to say that. And I accepted it with the generosity she gave it, even though the words were improper. And you have to think about it and think about who you're talking to. And sometimes when somebody says to you, I just think all lives matter, I don't understand why Black lives matter, you just have to explain to them, we're not saying that all lives don't matter, but we're having some bad luck with killing and death and accidents right now. And, you know, it's, you know, we question how much we matter. And we're not saying you don't matter. We just need to matter as much as you do. And right now, it's about Black lives. And a lot of people understand that. And sometimes you explain it to them in your own way, and they get it, and you've helped somebody else that if you ignored them, you would just think they were an a-hole. So think, listen, take a breath, kind of step back, assess the situation, and then respond. Don't lash out. Don't say that's stupid. Just say, look, I don't understand why you're saying that. And I don't know why you say that. And you know, that kind of hurts me, which will probably shock them, because they probably would never want to hurt you. And I need to tell you why. This is why. Because blah, 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 blah. You know, if I have somebody that comes in and they have a dog, here in the South, you see people will name their dogs crazy things, and one of them is Sambo. And I've had clients come in with a dog named Sambo. It's always a Black dog, because Sambo was a racially insensitive, blackface type character from the 40s and 50s. And I knew that because my father told me that. But these people just didn't know that. They thought it was just kind of what you named a Black dog, because that's what their grandfather named his dog. And they didn't even know what Sambo meant. And just talking to them helped them understand that. And, you know, and made me feel better, made them feel better. Just, you know, people have to listen and they have to talk. And they can't be afraid to talk, and they can't, and we can't be afraid anymore. And I say this about myself, or complacent about the injustice going on around me. And I very recently did that with a very good friend of mine, and it got a little heated, but we figured it out because we love each other, and he needed to know that what he was doing was wrong. And now we're better people, and he'll hopefully teach his son some of the lessons he learns from me, as I will teach mine lessons I learned from him.
Great. I think Dr. Noyes had something she wanted to add too.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Dr. Will. Just to add on, you know, as students, all of your universities, I should hope, should have a diversity and inclusion and anti-discrimination and anti-harassment policies. And I think it's an excellent idea for you to, as students who are concerned, get familiar with those, find out where they are. And if you're, you know, experiencing somebody at your school, even if they are a faculty member, a staff member who's not being compliant with those policies are there for a reason, and somebody at the university should be taking them seriously. So, you know, get to know those, and I agree, hold people accountable, whether you feel comfortable going directly to that person or, you know, going to if your dean or your associate dean and just saying, hey, this made me uncomfortable. I think when you're out on externships, that's a little bit harder. You know, you can't necessarily always feel comfortable speaking up to the vet who's not part of your school, but I do think your school would want to know if one of the rotation clinics was saying these things. You know, there's usually a feedback, I think, that you give when you come back from rotation, and I would share that with them. They probably don't want to be sending students to rotations where they're going to be experiencing that. And then when you get out in practice, I think it's a great opportunity to interview your places of work just like they're interviewing you. See if they have an HR manual, see if they have policies about this when you're applying for the job and doing your interviews. I worked in corporate practice for all my practice career and now work for an industry, and every company I've worked for has had a written, documented anti-discrimination policy, which a lot of smaller clinics don't have, but more and more are getting. And use those. I think it's you know, you can use those to your advantage and to back you up, and even if somebody's your superior, their superior should be held to that policy and should be able to talk to them. So just find those, use them, see if practices have them, and if they don't, see if you can help create one. I think it's a really good opportunity to use those. And you know, it's one of the benefits, I think, of being in corporate medicine or a larger chain is they usually have some of those HR policies in place and have thought about these issues a little bit more. But
Great.
Very well said. Thank you.
We have another question in our chat. This person is kind of interested, just to continue on with the conversation about your employees or coworkers. How do you communicate with people that aren't necessarily ready to be honest with themselves, that they're either not ready to step up to the plate and, you know, recognize their either privilege or that they have biased racism? Or how do you guys suggest, you know, communicating with people like that?
You mean as far as our employees?
Like if you, I think from the student perspective, as we go into the workplace and we have to work with different people, and you know, we want to communicate with them that maybe something that they said was racially insensitive or not appropriate, but they're just not ready to accept that that's who they are, that that's how they're being. I think it's a lot easier said than done to be like, well, you should confront them or leave the work.
You keep cutting out on me. I'm missing some part.
Sorry.
Fran, are you hearing that?
A little bit, you're sketchy, and I apologize. I have got to head out. I'm so sorry. Okay, I've got.
Yeah, I mean, do you want to say a little something on that before you go?
I'm gonna leave it in your hands because you say.
I'm trying. Okay, let me see. I understand this, just because it keeps cutting in and out. So I have to. Thank you, Fran. Appreciate you. Love you. Be good. Is you talk students going into the workplace and dealing with the clients they start seeing, or with the coworkers, or everything in general?
Yeah,
the coworkers.
Mostly coworkers, individuals that you maybe want to, you know, call out on being racially insensitive or making a comment that was not appropriate, but they're not ready to accept that that wasn't appropriate. Does that make sense?
Well, here's how I'd handle this here. You know, and again, one of the, it's not, it's, people think it's great being the boss. It's generally not. You know, it's rewarding, but it comes with a lot of responsibility that you must understand and appreciate and take that responsibility. And one of the things that I do is when we have new employees come in, we have an orientation, and I lead the orientation. It's the only PowerPoint I ever use. And, you know, answer questions and tell them, we go over our core values. And part of our core values are respect and non-judgment and compassion for others and being a part of a team. And anybody that comes in and disrespects somebody, they understand that they can come to me or any of the managers and share that. And they've done it. You know, there have been times where somebody feels somebody was insensitive to them, either some sort of gender bias or, you know, a guy walking by a girl and somehow thinking it's okay she got her hair done and rubbing her hair and saying your hair's nice. You know, when those things have happened, you know, we have a discussion and the person needs to understand what was wrong. You don't, and depending on the actual offense, they either are given a warning, or if it's just ridiculous. Like I hate to say this, but I had a employee once, actually a young veterinarian, slap a girl on her butt. Another girl slapped another girl on her butt, and she just didn't understand why the girl got so upset. And she kind of had to go, because you can't work here if you can't understand that. That's the answer. You either understand what happened and take the necessary steps to apologize and be a better person and do something beyond that. You know, educate yourself, things of that nature, which is hard for you to police as a boss, but you can certainly suggest it. But if they don't understand it, then they got to go. And that's just how we handle it, if that answers that question. You know, everybody needs to be comfortable in their workplace, including me, including everybody downstairs, and that's important to me. They need to know that they're treated fairly. They don't need anybody yelling at them or calling them names. You know, if you can't figure out how to provide direction and instruction without being a jerk, then you just shouldn't do it. So that's what we do.
Sure. Thank you for sharing that. I think we have time for maybe one more question. So before we head out, I just want to ask if you have any, maybe one or two, just like pieces of advice for students as they enter the vet profession on how they can either be better allies for the Black community or people of color, or just be more supportive in general as we enter the profession.
Yeah, you know what? If only it was as easy as this. Just don't ever have an opinion about anybody because of their color. Don't have an opinion about anybody because of where they're from. Don't have an opinion about anybody because of who they love and or what they wear. You know, I am a little old school, and there are certain things in a profession that you should need to be considerate about. It doesn't mean that you can't be yourself, but you know, you still want to have pride in yourself and how you dress, things like that. But you know, nobody should judge you instantly by doing that. But it just isn't that simple. But it should be, and that's just how I operate. You know, and I'm a Black man who, you know, one time I was driving from Tuskegee to Birmingham, and some guys ran my little Volkswagen almost off the road, and then stopped and with a bunch of them on the back of the bed of the truck and just started yelling at me, calling me a stupid ass nigger. I mean, it's just like, you know, and I was like this 18-year-old kid from California, and I was like, what? But, you know, it doesn't change who I am, and it doesn't change. I can't let that kind of behavior, I can't let that sort of ignorance change who I am and how I operate, because at the end of the day, that's really all that matters. And I have people watching me, and I have to be fair and responsible, and judge based on character and behavior, as opposed to how you look or how you feel or who you love, or, you know, because that stuff doesn't matter, you know. A lot of it is just who you are, and a lot of it, and even some of that who you are is not anybody's business but your own. So it's not for me to judge you on or tell you how to do it. Just like I don't want anybody telling me how to do it. Just be fair. Just be good. Just be a good person. You know, you think about real quick tidbits. You know, my grandmother used to always say to me, and it just seems so basic to me, but it's really just very true. When you wake up every day, you got two choices. You can have a good day or you can have a bad day. And if you decide you're going to have a good day, there are going to be few things that are going to stop that. But you decide to have a bad day, there are going to be many things that make it worse. And then you're going to rub that off on somebody else. That's one thing. You know, I'll say coming out of school, besides just understanding understanding and appreciating the diversity of people, whatever you go into, again, as I said before, make sure you have good mentorship, because this job is wonderful. And but it's you know, they say it, you know, people have to deal with humans. Human doctors deal with humans, and just human medicine, we deal with different species and human psychology. Where I spent 20 minutes on the phone with a lady today who was trying to tell me the best way to tell her husband they needed to do blood work on their cat. And I just finally had to tell her, I don't live in your house. I can't do that. I don't know. And she just was so disappointed. So I just kept trying, because, you know, I love what I do, but it's hard, and you need somebody to help you understand that. And it's just and if you have that in you already, it's just going to make you better. If you don't have it, it may help you understand that maybe I shouldn't practice. Maybe I should go into research. Maybe I should go and go into a specialty, which is okay. But unless you have a mentor to help guide you and direct you, you're being failed. And if you go to a practice and they don't give you mentorship, start looking for another job immediately. And you know, I would, other than that, you know, whenever you search for a job, and I've told a lot of that, know somebody to help you navigate contracts, to navigate benefits, you know, and if you have a really good employer, they'll have somebody to help you do that. We have somebody that does that with them for their benefit on our team, because that's just hard, and you'll end up just signing something away, and you'll look up one day and you didn't know you had a 10-mile radius, and you want to get a job in another city, in the city you live in, but you won't be able to do that because you got to go 40 miles outside of that radius, 40 miles outside of town. So just, you know somebody you trust, find somebody you trust, have good mentorship, and just be excited that you got the best job in the world, because right now, even in this world, we are probably one of the few industries that is profitable, because people are adopting dogs and getting puppies because they're lonely. They need companionship, and it's just it's beautiful, but it's exhausting, and it's the best job in the world. And I'm dealing now with a 24-hour hospital that has 5 practices in the radius that have all closed because their employees have tested positive for COVID. And we have 60 people that work here, but we've been fortunate because we've just been smart about how we've been doing it. And I talk to them very often on the Zoom saying, remember, when you leave work, whatever you do out there, you bring it back here. And you don't want that. You don't want to get anybody sick. You don't want to get sick. So it makes people kind of think. And I don't know if that's why out of our 3 hospitals, we really have been very fortunate to not close. But, you know, it's just work with a good team. You want to work with a good team with people that care about each other. You want to spend some time at a practice before you go there or wherever you go, and kind of watch the people and listen to them, and see if you see anybody making jokes about other people, or, you know, people sitting around on their cell phones. You know, you don't want to work there, because that's not an environment that's going to be good for you. Find a good environment.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing that and for sharing your perspective tonight.
Yes.
I would just like to thank you all again so much for joining us this afternoon. And thank you again, Hills Pet Nutrition and Dr. Will, for making this webinar a reality, as well as MCVMA for joining us this evening. We will be sending out a link to this video as it was recorded to your SAVMA delegates, so just stay tuned for that. Dr. Will, it looks like we have a couple additional questions. If you have any time and you're interested.
Oh, sure. And I see people saying thank you, and it zoomed by. I just saw Nicole Schimmel say that, and somebody else, thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for listening, and I'm proud of all of you. Keep up the good work. You know, don't be discouraged if it seems really hard right now, but you guys are going to do it, and you're going to get through it, and you're going to be great.
So for those that can't stay with us, that's okay. But are you okay with staying just a couple minutes longer and answering a couple?
Yep,
okay.
Sure am.
So we have one.
If I leave here, I got to go down there and work. So yeah.
So someone is asking if you have a perspective on why the vet industry is predominantly white, and what things maybe we should be doing to change that, or what steps we should be taking as a profession to help counterbalance that.
Yes, I've been asked that question before, and sometimes people get upset with my answer, which is probably fairly accurate. It's a lot of it's a cultural thing. My experience and having done this for 30 years is that certain cultures have certain different ideas about pets. And I have two parents who grew up in Alabama, and my father grew up in his understanding was that a dog was to be kept in the yard, and when that dog died, just go get another dog. I mean, they never got upset about it. They just would realize he'd come home one day and there'd be a new dog back there because his dad, that's just kind of how it was. So it still amazes him to this day that my father, who is an engineer and very educated and a wonderful man, he to this day, it just amazes him at what people will spend on pets. And one of my favorite stories I tell people when I open my practice, and he saw the x-ray machine, he said, "What is that?" I said, "That's an x-ray unit. It's a digital x-ray unit." He's like, "What do people spend to get a dog x-ray?" And I said, "Like $200. He's like, "I would never spend $200 to get a dog x-ray." And I said, "You wouldn't have to, it'd be free." He said, "I wouldn't even do it if it was free. I'm not x-raying a dog." I mean, it's kind of a cultural thing. And then, a lot of, different cultures see pets differently. And when they come in, they don't necessarily understand. And sometimes they almost take offense that you want them to do all this stuff with a dog. And that kind of carries on. When I grew up, nobody else, I grew up in Inglewood, California, and when I started kindergarten I was one of two black kids in the class. By my second grade class, there was nothing but black kids in my class, because that's just kind of what happened at that time. And then I grew up in basically black schools, and then I went to a historically black university. The most diverse class I was ever in my whole life was in vet school. And I just kind of, when you're in that kind of environment, and you grow up with a certain idea, and you have parents who drive you and teach you to learn, like I did. I wanted to be an architect or a veterinarian. Nobody I ever knew growing up wanted to be a veterinarian. I didn't have friends that really had pets. So long story short, which may be a little late for that, is that it's a cultural thing, and the way to improve that is by educating those who were not educated. And I mean that in every race, at every level. Depending on where you live and where you grew up, it's not that important to be on heartworm medication, or it's not that important to get anything but a rabies, because that's the only thing you have to get legally. You have to help them understand why this being is worth proper care and follow-up. And that's just getting better now, because people are better educated, and really because of Google as much as anything. And we just have to keep doing that. My part is I always go to schools, I really seek out minority schools, and you start talking to third and fourth graders. Kindergartners and first graders is kind of a waste of time. Even though they're cute, all they want to do is tell you how many pets they've had or what their grandparents have. But third and fourth graders listen to you, and that's kind of the time you can start teaching them about this dog. You don't just tie your dog in the backyard. You take care of your dog. You do this, you do that. And in some of the inner cities, these kids have never heard anything like that, and they've never seen a black doctor. It's shocking how amazed they are by it. And but when they see it, one or two of them will want to be veterinarians, and one or two of them will want to get a dog and take care of it and make their parents understand they have to do this. And you see it, and it's getting better, but it's, as long as you guys keep doing this and keep doing stuff like this, it's just going to get even better.
Great, thank you. So the very last question, someone asks, what are your thoughts on more systemic issues that may cause lack of diversity, especially in our profession? You mentioned hiring employees that are most qualified, but there are obviously larger factors that keep vets of color from reaching certain opportunities or being able to add things to their CV or resume. So what are your thoughts on just the more systemic issues of the lack of diversity in vet med?
You know what? Again, unfortunately, it kind of goes back to what I said. It's education. As I said earlier, I have more African American vets on my staff. I think even in some of the VCA hospitals, than any practice. And I think I probably attract more Black applicants because I'm Black, and they know I'm Black, and they've seen me somewhere, seen an article, and they will send resumes. Probably, I don't know as much as they will to other private practices. But I think about my friends that I've been colleagues with for years, older white gentlemen who have nothing but the majority if they have 8 employees, they're 9 young blonde white women and probably one other race, Black, even Jewish, what have you. And they're good guys and they're very nice, but it's just kind of what they know and what they do, and they don't really venture outside of that because the excuse they can use is that, well, we like students from University of Georgia. We like students from Auburn. I went to Auburn. I went to Cornell, things like that. And it really is just because they just have some stigma that they would, say, how dare you to. They clutch their pearls if you actually said that to them. But they do. You can see it in their team. Even the technician, a lot of practices around here, the vets are all white, the technicians are all white, and the people that work there, unfortunately, that are Black, work in the kennel. It is very common. It's like this kind of uncharted, I don't know, if you will, racism, in a sense that, that's kind of where they're going to work. And that's not good. But I promise you, some of these vets don't believe that they're doing anything insensitive, and they would take great offense to it. So back to what you were saying, what do you say when your fellow classmates or somebody are insensitive? Somebody has to say something, they have to do something. To be silent now is, almost to, if you're not a part of the solution, you're part of the problem. So that's going to, but, and a lot of that generation, I quite frankly, are kind of going into retirement and going to the wayside. And the ones coming behind them, some of them are still have blinders on when it comes to hiring outside of their race, but they're better about it, and they'll listen more, and they'll give more of a chance. So I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, thank you again so much for joining us tonight and for taking time away from your busy clinic. Again, like I said, this will be recorded and shared to our SAVMA YouTube page. Yeah, thank you all again for coming. Hope you have a good night.
Thank you guys.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks,
Do well.
Dr.
Good
Will.
luck, guys.
That was fantastic.
Moving to Georgia and you need a job, come. One other thing I'm doing, I'm working with a group and we're going to be opening. And one of my to real quick, what I feel one of my goals in life, if you will, and my legacy is going to be to give young veterinarians and of all races, and definitely with some diversity, an opportunity to come out of school, work into a managing practice owner program, because for those who are interested in practice ownership, because you guys are in this world now. You know, when I came out of vet school, I think my student loans were like $42,000, and I thought that was a lot. I thought it was a lot. I was like, oh my God, how am I ever going to pay that back? And some of the student loans you guys have, I mean, it's a house note. And what are you going to do? You come out of school, you know, unless you work at a very, very progressive, busy practice, that is a profitable practice, you know, you won't make much money. You know, you're going to have to work somewhere like here. So, you know, you're kind of stuck in this between a rock and a hard place. And then a corporation comes to you and says, look, you know, we'll give you a $50,000 signing bonus and pay you this much to come work here. And which sounds great, because you've got to pay back student loans. You got to be able to pay a car note and stuff like that. But it kind of locks you in. Just the truth. I'm not trying to slam corporations. There's definitely a place for them. But it locks you in, and you are kind of stuck there, because if you want to leave before a certain period of time, they want their money back. So there has to be some other option, some other opportunity for people. So I'm working with this with Harbor, with group Harbor Vet, which is a kind of a LinkedIn for vets to communicate with a lot of students, and also another group that I'm working with some gentlemen in the forum, where we're going to open satellite practices around main practices and have young grads train at the main practice, and then for those who are interested, go into one of the satellites, and it's going to be their business, and we're going to help them run it and teach them about the things that are important to run your business, and eventually, you know, over a period of time, kind of let it be theirs with some minor ownership. But that's, you know, that's what I'm doing. That's my passion. You know, I have 3 practices now, and I'm building 4 right now, 3 here in Atlanta and 1 up in Philadelphia. Just kind of an outlier, but a young lady I met at an Elanco conference in San Diego, who had just been out of school a while and wanted to be an owner, but didn't know what to do. And I said, let's open a practice. So she was kind of my guinea pig. And I decided that's what I'm going to do. That's going to be my passion. You know, I still work somewhat part-time practicing, but my passion is going to be offering those kind of opportunities. So anybody here, you know, and I mean, I'm not opposed to doing it somewhere else if the location's good and it's something that the person's passionate about, if it's their community. But that's kind of what I want to do. So I'm happy to, my email address, I guess, will somehow get to you. Anybody that wants to reach out and has any questions or interested in something like that, let me know. Or get on harbor.vet, which some of you students are probably on, and I'm one of the mentors on there. You can contact me there as well.
Are you okay with me sharing your email address for those that attended?
I don't know.
Okay.
I'm joking, of course.
I won't. I mean, it's up to you.
I just said you could. Yeah, of course you can. It's Dr. Will at thevillagevets.com. It's pretty easy.
Awesome.
It's an S though. The Village Vets.
All right.
Dr. Will.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you guys. I love this. I appreciate it. I hope it was informative and educational and you got something out of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was fantastic. Thank you so much.